tonight we're going to look at our educational system. A lot of talk has been going back and forth about how well do we do for our kids. You got a lot of people, and I'll admit I'm a graduate of Milford High, and it did well by me. Both my daughters graduated Milford High, and they've done well from the education they got. But it's always good to look at what do we offer. Tonight we'll start with a new school that we did. Brookside, I mean, it used to be the newest. Now Woodland takes that role. But why don't we start with an introduction?
Absolutely. So I'm pleased, Al, to welcome to your show Eric Elmore, who's our new principal of Brookside Elementary School. And maybe I'll have Eric talk about kind of his background a little bit, and then you can throw some questions his way.
Sounds great.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on here, Al. My name's Eric Elmore. I'm the principal of Brookside Elementary School. This is my first year not only in Milford, but also Massachusetts. So I'm recently relocated from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I had the opportunity to serve for 18 years in one school district there. Very unique opportunity because I had the chance to student teach in that district and also work my way up as a teacher, taught numerous grade levels, and then a number of years as an administrator. So brand new to Milford. The reason we relocated out here is that my wife had an opportunity with a job. So we saw it coming, so she accepted the position. So once I knew she was heading out here, I started interviewing. So just hoping and praying I would find somewhere that I felt comfortable and at home. And I have to say I've been thrilled.
So your wife found a position in Milford?
So she's actually in Marlborough.
Oh, close enough.
So close enough. So there's no
Well,
hour
there's a little more to the story, Al. So his wife's originally from southern New Hampshire.
Ah.
So I think that's part of the reason why they came back this way east.
Yeah, so she really wanted to relocate out, be closer to her family, which is nice. She also missed all of her Boston sports. So she is happy to be back in Boston, or at least outside of Boston, where we don't have to pay extra for all the Celtics games, the Red Sox games, and the Patriots games.
But you have to give up your tractor.
You know, I grew up out in the country, dirt roads and cornfields, so I am well versed in tractor terminology.
I just remember that one of the young men that my daughter dated at Holy Cross while she was in college came from somewhere near Indy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he talked about bring your tractor to school day.
It's funny you say that because the high school I went to, the very last day of the year, all the kids that grew up on the farm, they would drive their tractors to school.
Yes.
It's a different world.
It is, and you laugh about it, but you get stuck behind that. You're not getting to school for at least an hour after you expect to be there. So,
how many kids in your high school when you grew up?
About 1,000.
Really? Okay, so pretty good size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was decent.
The hardest thing for me was to get used to the drivers. Okay, in Indiana and that area, they're nice.
Absolutely.
They scare you.
It's a different.
I mean, here in Massachusetts, once you get used to the right-of-way,
Mm-hmm.
it's he or she who has the oldest or the rent-a-car has the right-of-way because they have the least to lose. Things like these red lights and stop signs that out there, they take them serious. Here, they're kind of optional. You know, most people follow them. And the yellow light, they slow down.
Which is just crazy,
It's like,
conceptually.
no, hit the gas. But the worst thing is they make eye contact. So, you know, the first time here, you're driving in Boston, if you make eye contact, got him. It's a foreigner. It's somebody from outside. I can cut him off. Out there, you know, they're waving, and I'm like, okay, this is a trap. These people from Indiana are setting a trap. They're going to let me go halfway and then cut me off. And as I'm going through the intersection, they're just waving. It's like, they're awful nice.
It's funny you mentioned the waving because that's one thing she warned me. She's like, babe, when you're out there, not everybody waves. So just so you know, they're not going to wave you in. Don't even think about it.
Wave you in, there'll be a sign of weakness. Cut them off.
So one more little fact I want to share about Mr. Elmore is that he has been wearing his Colts jersey on Patriots Fridays. I don't know if you have a comment on that, Al.
Colts? Horsies?
I am a diehard Colts fan. It's in the blood. Mom and dad, aunts and uncles have had season tickets since the Colts arrived in Indy. So if I ever give that up, I will never be allowed
they
back.
were a team that used to be looked up to with Johnny Unitas.
In Baltimore.
And then one night they snuck in to the city of Baltimore with trucks, and at 2:30 in the morning, ran away.
That's a true story.
I was there. I was living there.
I can only imagine the hate in the press.
Yeah, it's just, we figured that no matter how much we got upset, now they have to live in Indianapolis, so.
The joke's on them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Al.
So, principal of Brookside.
Yes.
Tell me about Brookside. It's been a while since we've talked about
It's
Brookside.
wonderful. You know, one of the things that really drew me to Milford and Brookside, the diversity. You know, it's a diverse community with lots of ELL learners coming in, both Spanish and Portuguese. So I love that about it. That's something that I've always looked for in all the schools I've worked in. And I was just thrilled to find a place that I could call home that had that.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Milford is a diverse town. You know, when you think about it, way back when we started with Italians, then Irish, then Portuguese, then Brazilians, now Ecuadorians, Guatemalans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've stolen customs from every country we can think of. You know, how many languages now?
So when I send out a message broadly, we translate it into 23 different languages.
Can you imagine?
Now, right now, after English, Portuguese is number 2, Spanish is a close third, and then Arabic is a distant 4th.
That would be tough. I started learning Arabic years ago because I was going to the Middle East so often. That was an interesting language.
It's unlike any of the things that are coming from like
Well, the thing
the
that
Greek
throws me for a loop is you get used to you writing your words, then I get to Riyadh and I look at the signs. That's just not right. And I realize they don't put vowels in. You know, you spell the word when you're learning it, but you're just supposed to know the vowels. So they don't put it. Same in Hebrew. We got to Tel Aviv, same thing. It's like, come on, seriously? You know, so I start writing American words or English words without the vowels.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. I don't know how people can.
I think when culturally, if you're used to it, you just kind of, it's what you know. It's what you're comfortable with.
Okay, so we heard about a BIP at Brookside, a behavior.
Oh, we have an incentive plan for behavior. So one of the things we've started looking at is ways that we can encourage kids and really focus on some of the positive things. So in conjunction with Memorial Elementary School, we put together a new program that divides Brookside into 4 different houses. Each of the houses is represented by a different color and has multiple grade levels included in it. So you'll have one house that has kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. And the plan is for the students to go above and beyond what they typically do. So if it's the expectation that they do something, they're not going to be rewarded for it, but if they go above and beyond, they will be. And then they receive hawks. We announce them over the intercom. There's big celebrations in class, and at the end of the year, the house
They
that has
receive what?
hawks.
Oh, hawks.
Hawks, H-A-W-K.
Okay.
Yep.
Sound like hucks. I was saying, is that an
Hawks.
Indiana thing?
Maybe. You gotta watch it.
Anything
now.
goes in Indy.
But that's cool. So you're rewarding them for above and beyond.
Yes. So for example, I saw a student the other day, he was leaving the restroom, but as he was leaving, he noticed that there were paper towels all over the floor. So he bent down and he picked them all up. That's something you can be rewarded for because that's above and beyond. He didn't have to do that. He wasn't asked to do that. We don't expect it, but he took it upon himself. And we really want to celebrate those kind of initiatives. So,
It's really cool.
and then at the end of the year, the house that has the most hawks, they receive an incentive, whether it's a dance party, whether it's a popcorn party, something to really say thank you, keep up the good work, and we appreciate it.
Can you talk about the kickoff too? Because there was a nice connection between Milford High School and Brookside.
Oh, there was a wonderful kickoff, and I wish I could take credit for it, but Mrs. Firth, our assistant principal, really took a lead in making this happen. But what they did is they communicated with the high school, and they asked if they could have some of the athletes, some of the leaders come down from the high school to Brookside, as well as the Hawk. And they were able to sit there and kind of share some of their experiences with the kids who were there listening, share how they were involved in their school. It's just a nice connection to the kids. Really celebrate some of the things that's happening at the high school.
Now, do we have a real hawk, or do we still have that orange processed McNugget thing?
I'm going to go with real.
I always felt so sorry for the
but
kid in the hawk. He's just busting their backside to, get everybody's attention.
And they did the full dance and the whole thing when they were there.
And
It was
yet
great.
we looked and said, it kind of looks like orange. It's not red. $60 million, we can't buy a new bird?
We'll put that into next year's request.
Yeah, it would be a line item, one new
One new hawk outfit.
So the student leaders, the athletes came down.
Mhm.
And how did it go?
It went great. I mean, the students were so excited to see some of these older kids that they look up to. I think most of all, they were excited to see the hawk. So the hawk was there, he had a dance. So the kids were really a great way to kick off this program.
But the great thing about that is it flowed both ways, because obviously my office is in the Milford High School, and Pete Boucher kind of helped organize and bring some kids down, as well as Josh Ottland. And the kids were just thrilled to death to be working with like the kindergarten, first and second grade kids, because they look up to those guys. Like we had, Kevin Pine was one of the students, and he's about 6'8". So, put him up next to some of the kindergartners,
Oh my
and
God.
he just got the biggest kick and biggest thrill out of just, engaging with those kids down there. So there's a payoff on both sides, which is really
You
nice.
mentioned two names that, when you think of the good Dr. Ottland and Boucher.
Yep.
Both of them. I mean, as I start thinking, Pete impressed me the first time he came on the show. And he made such a point of telling me that he is in charge of the student athletes. Not athletes who sometimes do academics. But he was so realistic in his view that less than 0.1% of my kids are going to make their careers in sports.
Mhm.
We got to make sure that academically they're prepared.
And even if you're looking to play, whether it's at the Division I, Division II, or Division III level, your academics have to be in order. Because if they're not, they're going to move on to the next student who's got those athletic skills, but also has the skills in the classroom. So we really emphasize that from the moment they walk into
That's
Milford
so
High School.
critical. I mean, I got so upset years ago when the Secretary of Education said that they were upset at the graduation level of the basketball teams. And they want to really set a goal to graduate at least 30% of their athletes. I did the same thing. I put my head down saying,
Which is just a horrifying number.
that's your goal?
Mhm.
I mean, I was really proud. I went to Holy Cross, a local school here, where the basketball coach told me the hardest thing he has is to recruit
Mhm.
because they don't cut them breaks. You got to be academically. Now, they'll give them tutors and help them out, but they take same classes as everybody else. My inherited son, 6'8", Chris, who comes to our events, I mean, he graduated and, well, he doesn't think he's making much, $90,000 a year and a half out of college. I'm sitting there saying, that's
not
not
bad.
too
Very
bad.
good.
But there he was. He was on the basketball team, and they won their division, and it was all good. But most importantly, when he graduated, he was prepared, and got a great job. I'm sitting there saying, yeah, that's not bad money. Not bad money at all. 2 years out of college, that's fantastic.
And with the APR requirements from the NCAA and in the college system, they need, like the student athletes need to be, because college is a big enough jump if you're just going there as a student. If you're going there as a student athlete, you've got your student full-time job.
And
you've
40-hour a week.
Yeah. So you've got 2 full-time jobs. So you really have to not only be able to manage time, but you've got to have those kind of core academic skills so you can succeed in whatever field you're kind of studying.
Yeah, see, I'd be happier if places like Kentucky all said, we're really running a semi-professional league.
Mm-hmm.
Let's set up schools, and let's admit they're not really they're not really academics. They're here to play a basketball one season, maybe two, and then move on. Okay, at least I'd have some respect for them.
And again, that ends up being such a small percentage, like you said before, like a small percentage of what college athletics is and kind of what we do from a high school athletics perspective, where you have to be making it in the classroom or you don't walk out into
Well,
the
and
field.
again, you start looking at things we're proud of. What we do for our special athletes,
It's awesome.
I mean, everybody talks about Milford, the Jen and the whole crowd down
Oh,
there,
gosh,
how
it's-
much they do for the special needs kids. And I mean, I've gotten yelled at because I say, well, they're not any more special or any less special than everyone. They're part of our 4,300 or 4,200 kids.
4371.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things culturally that we have, I think, going on in Milford that I think makes Milford, Eric was talking about, some of the special things about Milford, but one of the best things we do culturally is Special Olympics, unified sports, and best buddies. And there's such tremendous benefits to that, where like inclusion is a real core value that's lived every day in the Milford Public Schools.
And Milford kids have personalities. I remember when they did the National Special Olympics from Washington, and they had all the states, kind of like they do the regular Olympics with their flags for the countries. They had them all coming out by state, and everybody's so stoic. And out comes Massachusetts, and there's one Fruit Loop dancing. I looked at my wife, I said, "That's your daughter." And sure enough, they zoomed in. It was Alexis from Milford High, just jumping up and down with her kids and having a ball.
Which is what you should be doing.
So now, SPED and ELL play a major part in the budget
Absolutely.
and in our resource allocation.
Yes.
We always think of the kids at the high school level, but it starts down at the K through 2 level.
You're exactly right.
What do we do for those kids?
You know, it depends. There are a lot of different avenues that they can take based upon their needs. So for some of our ELL friends who are new to the country and don't speak any English, we do have supports in the classroom. So for example, if they were to be in the kindergarten, we do have teachers that are bilingual, meaning they speak English as well as, let's say, Portuguese, to help make that transition for the students a little bit easier. We also have teachers who will work solely with them, and there are different instructional practices that they can provide them to help them make that transition. Because with anybody who has tried to learn a second language, I can tell you, it's a challenge. But then all of a sudden you're thrown into a language that you don't understand, that you have no idea what they're saying. I can't imagine what that would be like. So we do everything we can to help support them, to make it easier, to help them learn English as a second language. And then for some of our other friends who have IEPs, there are, again, a number of different avenues, a number of different supports that we have available to them. Whether it's an inclusive classroom where they were in with the gen ed students, and we have other teachers who are in supporting them, and we have other students who are around them who are role models to help them learn and kind of model what should happen. We also have programs where we pull them out to give them some very specific instruction based upon their needs and where they are in the curriculum. So just different options. Everybody's different. All of their needs are different. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so we really try to adapt what we do to meet their needs.
So the EL program across the board is becoming more like special education, where special education runs the gamut. There's a lot of different students with various disabilities, and we have programs that kind of meet their specific needs. But with EL students, it's kind of language acquisition is kind of the game. And what's happening now is we're having students who aren't making effective progress. We have to come up with a plan for each individual student about how they're going to kind of get back on track. One of the things that was happening several years ago is we were over-identifying our EL students as students with special needs because they didn't have the language skills, and they were coming up as having deficits, which were more language-based because they didn't have those skills. And so now we've, the last few years we put in, testing in the native language and a number of safeguards to make sure that we're not misidentifying a student who just is trying to learn the language, and there's no other, there's no other disability. What we're seeing now is the EL population has about the same incidence of disability as our general population.
No, that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of intuitive.
Yeah, the only thing I would think some of the kids would fall away from the special needs is because you get kids coming over to the country who can afford to come.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the kids you saw were a little bit more well off academically. So at home they got more education.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing two, and I'm going to oversimplify because we see multiple different groups coming from a lot of different countries, but we see like our Brazilian students tend to be more engaged in formal education, regardless of what grade level we kind of capture them at. Some of our Ecuadorian students fall into a category of what's called SLIFE student, which is a student with limited or interrupted formal education. So if they came from like a rural area in Ecuador, they may have not been in a formal classroom for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 years if we're getting them when they're high school age. And that's a different kind of programming as opposed to.
Well, a lot of the Portuguese came over. My father was one, and he had the full 4 years of education that they offered in the village.
Absolutely.
And it was just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you laugh about kids learning a second language, for a lot of us, that was English. You know, I mean, at home, everybody I knew spoke Portuguese.
Right.
It was when I stepped outside the house and all of a sudden, what are these people talking? Why are they speaking this funny language?
Yeah.
And you just had to learn it. So what other neat programs you got going on down at Brookside?
You know, this would be my first year at Brookside, but I feel like there are so many new things that are coming on board, things that we're trying for the first time. One of those things is an instructional coach. An instructional coach is a veteran teacher, an experienced teacher, who is there to support classroom teachers with their professional practice. So we have an instructional coach who we're sharing with Memorial Elementary School, and this individual comes in and she's holding PLCs, professional learning communities, and teachers have volunteered to come talk about guided reading. What does it look like? Start investigating different best practices, start taking a hard look at their intimate practices. The instructional coach can also step into classrooms, they can observe, they can co-teach. That means teach with the teacher in the classroom to both inform the students. They can also model for the teacher what a different instructional program might look like to help make it a little bit easier, because you know, you have to think of our teachers as we do our students. Our students have different learning styles. Our teachers do too. So if we're looking to help them improve and help them grow as educators, then we need to trying to find the best way to reach them. And we think an instructional coach is a great way to do that.
Now, is that done by focus area? Like we used to have curriculum directors.
Mm-hmm. So an instructional coach basically will meet with a teacher, and the teacher will identify like a problem of practice. Like, hey, I'm struggling with classroom management, or like Eric gave the example, guided reading, or hey, my classroom is running great when I get it up and running, but when I transition from one activity to the next, it takes me like triple or quadruple the time to kind of transition, and I'm looking for some, you know, let's work through some of these problems or issues. So it could be any kind of aspect of practice, or you know, you might be looking at like mathematics, for example. Like I really want to focus on my mathematics instruction because you know the students have the basic facts, but they're not able to apply them to like multi-step problems.
So it really is more of a teaching coach.
Yes, just to help them.
Not like we thought of. You had one for history and one for English.
Correct, which is more curriculum focused.
Do we still have those?
We have CTLs, which are curriculum team leaders, but they're full-time teachers who take on the additional role as a stipended position.
But the thing I've been most impressed about and most excited about is the buy-in from teachers. With it being a new program, I expected there to be some ramp up, teachers not buying in the first year, maybe a little more the second year. But from what I've seen from the staff at Brookside, they seem invested in it, and they trust our instructional coach, and that trust, that's a big piece of it. If they don't trust you, they're never going to let you into the classroom. They're never going to open up their personal practice and share, this is an area I need to grow and this is an area I need to improve. So that they have that trust in our instructional coach, I think says a great deal. And I'm truly excited about the next step we're going to take, whatever that is.
You know, it's funny because they used to have guest readers.
They still do. We
Do
still
they?
do, yeah. We still have guest readers.
Because I'll never forget when they, somebody saw the name Correia. So they said, oh, we'll sign her up to talk to the Portuguese kids. Because my wife, when we moved here, spoke no Portuguese. So she goes in with the book, and they said, well, she goes, this is in Portuguese. They said, well, yeah, that's Portuguese class. And of course, Sharon looks and says, wait a minute. She goes and grabs an English book. She says, I know your family, I know your family, I know you speak English, don't you start.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was a ball.
Yeah.
It was a way for people who couldn't, say, volunteer a lot to still be able to go in and help.
No, we have great parents come in all the time. We have some of our, you know, Milford police officers, our firefighters, you know, some of our elected officials will come in. So it's fantastic. So we still have that program going. And
that's cool.
And some of our teachers will post on Twitter just kind of like, hey, the mystery reader today was so-and-so's mother or, you know, officer, you know, Gresham or whoever, which is really nice. It's a nice program.
One of the things everybody worries about, security. Okay, you're the chief executive of that school.
Yep.
You're being charged with taking care of 300 of the most precious items in the world. How do you feel about security at Brookside?
I think being a new father myself, that's always a concern. Something you always have to think about.
New father?
New father.
Tell him your son's name.
So you're gonna get me in trouble here. So we have a 20-month-old.
Brady.
His name is Brady. You know, in Indy, that's not a common
I'm
name.
starting to like his wife.
See how the influence?
She just quietly moves him back to the area.
Peyton finished second.
Oh, God.
No, we joked about Peyton being the name of the second one. It wasn't. And then we have a 2-month-old at home.
Oh.
His name's Jack. So, but being a new father, it's something that you think about. I mean, you're right. That's somebody's most precious commodity. So that's something you have to take extremely serious. And I think we do at Brookside. You know, anybody that comes in the building, they have to check in. They have to buzz them in. We have a good look at them. They come right to the office. We check them in, give them name tags. It's something that you can't ever lax on because you never know what might happen. But I feel comfortable with the process that we have in place.
Well, that was the whole argument when we talked about the school SWAT teams. I remember looking over at Chris Moore and I said, how can we not vote for this? Can you imagine if we vote no and something happens? You know, I hope the 4 officers we hired retire bored.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hate to be cold about it, but I hope they never do a day's work in their life besides preparation.
And we have a phenomenal relationship with the Milford, both the police department and the fire department, and we work hand in hand, and we're constantly looking at processes and procedures. Every time there's a school break, the police will do a training session at a different school to not only get like a school like situation or scenario in place, but also to become familiar with like the layout of the buildings, get familiar with who the principals are, who the secretaries are, so they know those frontline people.
Well, that was one of the big benefits we saw. I mean, at first when they said we're part of a regional SWAT team and they can assemble and be on site within 40 minutes, it seemed, okay, 40 minutes. But of all these horrible situations, the longest has been 18.
Right.
So we're kind of looking at each other saying, now wait a minute, we're gonna have these wonderfully trained, heavily armed cleanup people? Because they're gonna show up 20 minutes after? No. And again, it was more, how could you look at somebody and say, maybe, even possibly, your son or daughter could have been saved if we had voted yes? So, you know, knowing the school was one of the big pitches that our chief, Tom O'Laughlin, brought out, saying, you know, there's an advantage to knowing every nook and cranny. Because the kids do. I mean, by the time we graduated high school, we knew everywhere that you could, you know, sneak around or, you know, do things you're not supposed to do. So having the police not know, you know, to the same level the layout was something that we didn't see as a very good thing.
Yeah, and we, like Officer Gresham and Officer Castiglione are part of our faculty. You know, they're just part of the team, and I think the new team is starting to become part of the team. And, you know, those relationships, you know, I talk to those guys via, you know, phone calls and texts all the time about a variety of issues, because we have, you know, medical emergencies that happen on occasion at the schools, whether it's a faculty member or a student, and we're all coordinating in those situations.
You don't send out the memo, thou shalt not get sick
Well,
on school time?
You know, that's a whole other issue. Good economy equals no substitute teachers.
Yeah, there you go.
But to add on to that, not only, they're a constant presence in our buildings. They're walking around, they're interacting with kids in a positive way. They're coming into classrooms. Mark came in the other day and stepped into a classroom because there was a student in there that had kind of a phobia of a police officer. So he just was able to really make a connection with that student. And I'm sure that's something the student will never ever forget, and hopefully it was a positive enough experience that they will no longer have that fear, or if anything else, less of a fear. So I love the fact that they're such a part of our building, such a part of who we are as a school district.
Well, you know, it's funny because that's Milford, my inherited son, who played basketball at Holy Cross, and somehow we've just inherited him. We were out one night, Emily, my darling bride and I, and Tom and his wife came by, and we sat there for an hour, just talking. He's my neighbor, you know. We like him, he's a nice guy. When he left, Chris looked at me and said, that is really strange. And I said, what? He goes, I just sat with the chief of police for an hour. I said, that's Tom, he's our neighbor. He goes, it doesn't happen where I'm, you know, he's African American, he comes from down south. He goes, this would not be something that would ever happen in my hometown. Police chief is kind of ethereal, you know, and he's up there in the ether layer somewhere, or, you know. And he's like, what do you mean ether layer? He goes, nobody can figure it out. But you'd never talk to him.
Right, right.
You know,
And Tom is like just out there interacting with people, which is, you know, fantastic.
it wasn't even a question. Yeah, my neighbor, Tom. Well, he's also the chief of police.
Right.
Yeah, but it's my neighbor, Tom.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, but you go through it, and, you know, the fire department you talk about. We've been so blessed having first John Toohey,
Who was fantastic.
who was great, and now Toohey Rev 2,
Yep.
Bill Toohey, you know.
And he's awesome too.
He's the same way.
Yeah.
You know, you need something done. I remember Milford High, 2010, they wanted to take a class picture. Well, how do I can't do it. You know, from the front steps,
Yep.
the kids would be tiny. The fire department rolled up ladder 1 over to the parking lot by the softball field, and I went up on the ladder and took the picture. And you sit there and say, only Milford.
It doesn't happen elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
Not-
Yeah,
my
no,
experience.
and they're great when we have like events like at the elementary schools. They'll bring the trucks so the kids can kind of explore the trucks, and again, it's just another way to kind of break down some of those barriers that people have.
so what is the biggest challenge you think you're going to be facing at Brookside?
You know, I think
I mean,
First-
I know one of them, Eric, sorry, will be too much money and not enough to spend it on.
you're exactly right.
That's more my problem.
You know, initially I think my challenge was just getting to know the students and staff, just making sure they understood who I was and some of my core beliefs, that I was there to work side by side with them. And I think every day makes it a little bit easier as we're getting to know each other and who we are. But as we move forward, I think one of the things we're going to be looking at next year is data. Being more data driven. How are we using the data that we have? So this year we're looking at 2 different assessment tools and currently piloting them to decide which is going to be a better assessment tool for Milford. And it's wonderful. These are all computer-based or adaptive, which means that as you get questions right, it gives you a more challenging one. As you get questions wrong, it gives you an easier one until they're able to finally kind of tease out your ability levels. But that's just another piece of information that we can have on hand to support our students to really meet their needs. So we really want to take a look at that information and become more data-driven. I think that's the next big challenge that we're going to be facing.
But what kind of data? Like their ability to learn math?
No, you're exactly right. Good question. So some of these tests, they focus on both reading and math. And the wonderful part is it's not just are they a good reader or are they a bad reader, but it breaks down specific skills and skill sets so that you know, little Johnny, when it comes to math, he's great with addition, but he really struggles with subtraction. You know where to focus your instruction. There's no point in teaching him the addition. He's already got that. Let's not spin our wheels with that. Let's focus on the subtraction. Let's focus on those areas where he has a deficiency to help turn it into a strength.
So we're not only looking at that, Al, at the K2 level, we're looking at it possibly all the way K through 12, and we're piloting it across the district, a couple different platforms. One of the things, you know, K through 2, we don't have MCAS data, but the bad thing about MCAS data is that you don't get it until the fall of the following
too
year,
late.
and the kids have already moved on. And again, you can see trends and patterns over time, but what I love about these products is they give us, you know, real-time like data on the kids. I think, what are we doing, 3 times a year?
3 times a
3
year.
times a year. And so teachers can actually take that information, and it's really user-friendly, and really kind of put in interventions in real time.
Yeah, but the fact that I'm getting trending information while I can act on it. You know?
Exactly, exactly. So, you know, you get something on, like, say you're in my class in let's say 4th grade, because MCAS is in 3rd grade, and I find out that you're struggling with, you know, fractions to decimals, let's say. Well, you're gone. And again, teachers can have other ways of kind of measuring that, but now what they can do is they can kind of get this information, put a few interventions in place, and then we're going to know at the midpoint, because we're taking the tests again, how the students are doing.
Well, I just love
and
the
they're
idea
quick
at the
tests
beginning
too.
of the year, I can find out that Brady has a challenge here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Exactly.
can try something. In the middle of the year, I find out, okay,
He's doing
it
better.
worked
It
or
worked,
it didn't.
it didn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, knowing that it didn't work was not as impressive, but just as important. Because I don't want to
Exactly
do a
right.
whole year of a program that he or she doesn't respond to.
Correct.
Yeah, and we can catch kids before they fall through the cracks, which is a wonderful thing. So I'm tremendously excited about that, but you know, there is a learning curve that comes with it, and we're all going to be kind of starting fresh with that. And how do we use all this new information? How can we use it to really drive our instruction in the classroom?
And Eric's got a lot of great qualities, but we were interviewing him early on. We went through multiple rounds of interviews, and he gave an answer on data. And you know how you fall in love with somebody once they do that? He's about like 4 or 5 minutes into his answer, and I'm like, all right, that's good.
Okay, this is the guy. Speaking of data,
Mhm.
long-range educational plan?
Yeah. So we actually did a presentation last night, Al, to a group of community members on kind of the long-range, it's called the Long-Range Educational Facilities Plan, but what it does is it marries kind of our long-range educational goals to like our facility planning. So like one great example is like, we're looking at, I think we've identified the high school as the #1 priority in terms of a project. And whether we do a renovation, rebuild, some kind of combination, we want to make sure that we have facilities in place that match what our long-term goals are educationally.
Yes.
So some of the things we're looking at is we're looking at you know, some more kind of career-based education, and also kind of STEM programming. So right now, like at Milford High School, we have tremendous offerings. We have, you know, a variety of, you know, science classes, computer science, technology, engineering. It's a really kind of a very nice kind of breadth and depth of kind of courses that range from, you know, AP courses to, you know, we have a group of students who actually fix our, you know, laptops and Chromebooks across the district. So it kind of runs the gamut. But right now we don't have the lab space to kind of fit all our current class offerings, and definitely not what we're looking for in the future. Additionally, we're looking at you know, some career areas. You know, we're looking at biomedical sciences. We're looking at advanced manufacturing. We're looking at we just started a building trades course last year, and we have a waiting list for the building trades course, and it's wildly popular. We had a nice partnership with the state you know, building trades kind of organization who gave us some startup money, and it's just really taken off. So they've been able to kind of partner with some local employers who are very interested in students that have, you know, carpentry skills, because there's such a need in that area.
So you can do that without violating the thou shalt not compete with BVT?
We can, because it's not a Chapter 74 program. So we're just offering it as a course. It's right now we're looking at it like maybe a 2-course kind of pathway. But you hear from the employers in all these areas, and they say they're in desperate need of you know, people to go into those fields, and they're lucrative fields. They're not, you know, minimum wage fields. They're fields that if you're in there for a couple of years, you're going to make a very comfortable middle class kind of.
Eric, we've had this discussion for many, many years, because we do a very good job at taking care of our special needs population.
Mm-hmm.
We do a good job both ends of special needs, because I consider the top 5, 10% special needs. If we're going to get our next Nobel laureate, we got to take care of them, just like the percentage that we want to drive to their potential. And I was put into perspective by my daughter, who said she's got the older kids, the special need, the older kids. And she said, Dad, my job as an educator is to get the kids to their potential, and maybe a little bit more. But all of my kids have different potentials.
Mm-hmm.
You know, doing the Best Buddies and all those programs, you see a wide range of needs. So it's really impressive that we're able to put money in. And you know, the way we budget, you pretty much have an open hand at taking care of the kids. Because you know, we've gotten into this argument about, well, the state says, and I went on town meeting floor and I said, look, one thing I know is Milford has never counted on direction from Beacon Hill or Capitol Hill to tell us how to take care of our kids. We'll do what's right because they're our kids. Nobody has to tell me by law I have to do this or that. But the thing that always bothered me was when I grew up in Milford High, 8th grade you made your decision. If you were going to college, you went to Milford High. If you were going into a trade, you went to BVT. Now the problem becomes in the last decade or so, BVT's done incredible. But you have to be in the top 10 or 15% of the academic class to be able to go there. And I think of people like my father, put him in organic chemistry, he would have never done well. Give the man a tool, he was an artist. What he could do with his hands was just unbelievable. And I've been pushing for years saying, who's taking care of people like my dad? Because, you know, being a plumber, being a carpenter.
Those are great jobs.
You know, I mean.
And you try to find a good plumber or carpenter, and you're waiting like 3 or 4 months to get somebody into your house to.
No, but even, you know, biotech operator, you know, starting at 55, 60 grand. Those are pretty good jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you think of how long a teacher has to work and the education a teacher had to get up into the $60,000 range.
Right.
Good point.
And so what we're seeing is the opportunity to partner with and kind of, I don't want to say push kids, but make kids aware of opportunities in that are like certificate programs and trying to give them some introduction and some access to what does it look like. Like we have, and this is kind of a bad example, but it kind of fits. We have a business and banking program. And so the business and banking kids have gone to, we have the Milford.
That's the Milford Fed by the
Yeah,
cafeteria.
we have the Milford Federal branch, and so the students are in there, and every once in a while I'll walk in and say, I want to open up a home equity line of credit. And the kids kind of freeze for a second, and they say, no, I just want to take your picture. But they're able to work with Milford Federal, Consigli, Milton Cat, Waters Corporation. So they're really seeing like a real kind of, a broad kind of spectrum of different opportunities in like the business field. And we want to do similar things around, you know, some of the biomed jobs that are out there where if you do like a certificate program or a 2-year degree, you can walk into a job where, like you said, you're making 60,000, it can jump to 70 or 80,000 because people just aren't going into these fields. And there's just a whole list of fields where there's not enough applicants for open positions.
Well, that was one of the problems down in Southern Cal. We had a bioreactor facility. And the biggest challenge I had was attracting and keeping people because it was so expensive to live. You know, you're one of the rare people coming from the square states or the almost square states to move to the coast. Most times you can't recruit people from the square states because the cost of living
Substantial.
is so much higher out here. You know, so anything you can do to build up, you know, kids that have a bio operator training or, you know, internships. And every year I take 2 interns from Holy Cross to give them the leg up when they go apply. So anything we can do on that side, I think is great.
But what we're hearing too across the board is that you know, kids need to have kind of basic skills and kind of an interest. Like if you're talking about like whether it's like, let's go advanced manufacturing, for example. The average salary for advanced manufacturing is somewhere between the high 60s and low 70s in Massachusetts. And it's not Laverne and Shirley putting bottle caps on, you know, the bottles as they're popping by. I tell that joke now and not too many people get it.
Can
so
remember now.
it's good that you guys are laughing. But they're looking for people who have like those kind of science and math skills, have curiosity, can look at and problem solve, but also have those soft skills. They can work as part of a team. They can communicate effectively. So what we're hearing from employers is help us build those soft skills so when the students come to, you know, whatever job it is, whether it's right after high school or after college, that you tend not to get fired because you can't name, you know, the causes of the Civil War or whatever, you know, whatever kind of factual information you can't kind of pull back from. But if you can't get along with other people, you can't work as part of a team, you can't communicate effectively, you can't kind of creatively problem solve, you know, those are the things that end up costing you because you don't have the ability to interact with others.
That's great.
And so we're changing the schedule next year, so we're going to have a couple blocks where we can bring people in to do some soft skills training. We can bring people in from different fields to kind of give kids information. We can create a more robust kind of guidance curriculum where we're not pulling kids out of classes, so they're not missing academic time. And it also is going to give us flexibility to send kids out for internships because we're going to grow our internships program. So we'll have a number of students when they're seniors that might either do a full year internship somewhere, or finish up their academic program and do a second semester full-time internship and get credit for that. And we're not there yet, but that's where we're heading.
Well, I mean, we had an old Holy Cross alumni who gave me a chance when I was at school.
Mhm.
And that's what started me down the biotech road.
Yeah.
You know, first in analytical chemistry, then moving over, because all of a sudden, and I was the one who was convinced I was going to be a bench chemist. So I did the internship, and I said, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
So that's almost more valuable than finding something you love, because things evolve and change over time, and you do too.
You know, and all of a sudden you start realizing if you have the basic skills, you can move around and advance yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the way back to Milford. How far did I go? We talk about, I heard, a building.
Yes.
The high school being the bunker it is.
Yes.
Now,
So-
in all candid, I hear about we're going to build a new high school, and I start laughing. How would that be even possible?
So basically what the process will be is once we kind of, finalize the long-range plan and kind of come up with a timeline that kind of, is realistic from a fiscal perspective, as well as just like, there's logistics involved in just like, when you engage with the MSBA. And the MSBA right now it's almost as difficult to get into an Ivy League school as it is to get MSBA funding at this point. I think their acceptance rate now is about 15%.
Really?
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is the escalation in construction costs.
Oh.
And that's just not keeping up with, just the
funding they're
the
getting.
funding they're getting, yeah. So it's just not.
I mean, come on. We just spent $60 million plus building Woodland. When I was a kid, you could have bought Milford for $60 million. They would have thrown in Hopedale, maybe Mendon.
And I think Woodland would be over $100 million if we started it today.
Oh my God.
So it's the escalation is crazy. So part of any process is you put in a statement of interest once you've got your plan together. And we're pretty close to having the plan together. And we just got to figure out when do we want to put our statement of interest in, because we want to make sure that, with our luck, we're not, saying, hey, we're going to do it this year, knowing it's going to take 3 or 4 years. If we get it the first year, we got to be ready to go. So when we put it in place, we've got to say, hey, we put it in, in 20, 21, 22, whatever the year is, we've got to make sure that everything else is lined up behind it.
Let's see, we're in fiscal 20 coming up, so 26, somewhere in that range.
So we're going to agree to disagree on that one.
We saved up money for a dozen years,
Mm-hmm.
kept putting it away, and everybody kept saying, why are you growing the stabilization account so large? We said, school coming. So when Woodland came, we were able to handle it without using profanity like 2.5 override or debt exclusion, because there's some of us who don't ever want to hear that profanity.
Which is kind of miraculous and unique, because there's a lot of communities. There's not a lot of communities, I should say, that have been able to do something like that, because the state, what was the reimbursement rate, about 59%, 57%? I think it was 59. But you're still talking about $32 million of
Yes.
local funding.
Yes, and if you look at the way towns around us have done it, you're a homeowner in Milford, how'd
Yes.
you like to get your tax bill? And then, oh, by the way, for the new school, here's another $500 assessment.
Not a very happy look on my face.
So, I mean,
That's
we're-
not the right answer.
What
but
was
I
I
mean,
thinking?
seriously, when I look at the high school, it's a bunker. I mean, I can't imagine that you can't renovate and build on.
So one of the things we have to look at as part of a feasibility study, and again, regardless of what kind of pathway we follow, is, and they have architects and professionals that kind of assess this for us, is do we, renovate, do we, build a new building, and they look at like this site and other sites in town, and we just went through that process with Woodland. and
With
we know
Woodland.
we know there's not a lot of viable options.
There wasn't enough room for Woodland. Where would you
Right.
put, Woodland is a battleship. Where would you put an aircraft carrier like the
Right.
high school?
Right. So, going through that process, we'll determine whether it's a renovation or rebuild. And again, the systems are all original from the 1970s. I think it was 73.
The end of 73 we moved in. They had telephones, rotary telephones in each classroom.
Which was state of the art.
We thought that was incredible, that when the teachers weren't around, we could call each other.
But like, the plumbing systems, the heating system, the roof is coming up on the end of its useful life, I think in the next 4 to 6 years, somewhere in that
See,
range.
6 years, good idea.
I'm trying to give ranges now, Al, because I think I'm learning.
Well, we haven't added a square foot And even though we haven't added kids, and I mean, this year,
Yeah, this year's an aberration, and I'm not quite sure what's happening.
you know, we're hearing it, but in the past, you added one kid. What Jose Vieira taught me was the geography per kid is huge now compared to when we were kids. So, you know, the amount of space needed, and I mean, the idea of doing away with Milford High as she is, the pool,
Well, that's,
you know,
there's a pool in the auditorium that we'd have to look at. And that's why, like, look at the Brookside, we call it a renovation, but we did, I think.
yeah, we built a new school on an old shell.
Right, which that could be a possibility too.
See, I can see that. I can see adding a wing, moving the kids. I personally think that if possible, you'd go up a floor.
And that's always a possibility. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have the vision for it, but like an architect will look at space and, you know, kind of
Yeah.
the footprint, and they'll see and kind of come up with concepts, and you're like, wow, that's incredible.
And then you got the field house.
Right,
We need a field
which
house.
we'd love to have, because we have the state-of-the-art kind of turf field and kind of
But just you
outdoor
go
area.
to towns like Shrewsbury, different towns around.
Yeah,
And you see their gorgeous field house for their athletes.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not a big athlete, but, you know, I want to take care of the biotech kids. I also want to take care of the athletes. And we've done it with the field, but wouldn't it be sweet? Now, that we'll have to pay for.
correct.
This SBA is going to laugh at us. Like,
Yeah, you'll get some reimbursement on a field house because you get certain number of square footage for like gym
yeah,
space.
$32.80.
Well, it's a little bit. It's a little better than that now. It's a little better than that. But one of the things we're really looking at is, you know, again, marrying the facility to kind of the vision in the future, but also, you know, we have to do our due diligence if we're participating in the MSBA reimbursement process. So we have to go through that feasibility study to determine, you know, what's going to make sense. My bigger worry, though, Al, is Stacey, and that's why we looked at like a complex option, because the high school you can kind of do what you're talking about. You can kind of do that like wing, open it up, close another wing, kind of bring it on. Stacey's a different beast in terms of a renovation project, and my worry there is like, you know,
Where would you? When
that's
we did
that's a
Brookside,
great question.
we built half of a school. And we literally, if you look at the number of classrooms, we put a memorial at Woodland, at the high school. We built half a school.
Yep.
Because the original idea that we were going to renovate Brookside with children in it, I don't know what narcotics that architect was on, but he should have shared them. Because none of us could see how you have a renovation going up in part, you know, and we had 350 kids. I mean, you start talking about 700 kids or
1,000.
I don't know where you put them.
Yeah, so that's my bigger worry. I think the high school we have some workability. Stacey is a concern in terms of, and that's we determined. I think it's pretty clear as priority too. Is, you know, how do we like look at the plan for if we do like a renovation, a rebuild?
But you could do a Woodland at Stacey.
Possibly.
You got the town park right there.
Yep.
You could build Stacey while you're using Stacey. The only thing is, I mean, we went through this years ago when I came back to Milford. I got a phobia, I went and looked at my first school, West Street School. It's an empty lot. Oliver Street School, they sold it for apartments. Spruce Street School, the library sits on it. And Stacey was boarded up.
Yep.
And I remember the discussion was, it would have been economically better to knock it down and put up an ugly glass building. But it wasn't Milford.
Mm-hmm.
That's Milford granite. You know, we all remember going to Stacey. There's a piece of every one of us there. So we spent more money renovating Stacey because essentially we built a school inside the Milford granite shell. But sometimes you got to do certain things because we're Milford. You know, you look at Stacey and the old high school, brings back a lot of good memories. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, you know, and it's one of those things where we're going to get, I think, as we move forward in the process, more good information as we move forward, and I think some of the logistics are going to become more clear based on kind of the feedback we get from architects and project managers.
I'll go on to bet that we'll do a Woodland, build a new Stacey next door,
Mm-hmm.
and then tear down Stacey and build a new town park. Because I can't imagine where you're going to fit 1,000 kids.
That's the 1,000-kid question right there.
So what else?
We're working with an organization right now which I think has got a lot of promise. It's called the Massachusetts Consortium of Innovative Educational Assessment, so MCIA. And we've got a number of grade levels kind of piloting and using what are called performance assessments. And what this does is it creates kind of more engaging, it drives more engaging curriculum. But one of the goals of the organization is to kind of, they're saying like, MCAS scores look at a very narrow set of skills. And, if a student can put a project together and can present to a group of students or can do something in the community, that shows kind of a broader range of skills.
Sure.
And it hits on some of those soft skills we're talking about. And so we're seeing like, teachers engaging in a variety of different projects. And kind of an example we did a couple of years ago, we did a thing called place-based education where the students at Stacey Middle School kind of followed the Charles River from its source all the way into the Boston Harbor. And they looked at, the science behind it, they looked at the economy, they looked at the history, and those are the kind of projects we want to kind of see more of across the Milford Public Schools.
We're coming to the end. One last question.
Sure, jump in.
The students leaving Milford,
Yes.
up, neutral, or down this year?
So this year, I believe I think the gap is closing even further in terms of school choice. We've got 4,371 kids in the schools right now, which is the highest I think we've had in our history.
But are we gaining ground or less kids choicing out?
I think over the last few years we've seen, for this year in particular, I couldn't tell you because we kind of do that.
But last
analysis.
year it seemed like
Yeah, no, it's leveling out and we're seeing kind of a decline.
that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank
you
you.
for starting the Milford family.
We're excited.
So what is he, 2 generations away
Two more
from?
generations.
So
and
close.
You got to live within 2 miles of your mother, and you're an official Milfordian.
All right.
Well, New Hampshire, you can move the in-laws down. That counts. As always, get to know the school. It's amazing. We'll always hear about the bad things. What areas we can improve, what areas we should do different things on. It's hard because you don't hear about how well our kids are doing in college, how many colleges are accepting our kids. And candidly, we're biased. I think our kids are the most intelligent, most beautiful, most handsome, most everything. But the people that count are the colleges, whether they accept them. And it seems like we're doing really well. So as always, thank you for joining us. To our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life